Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning. Christine Westerland here with the Illinois Association of Community Action Agencies and
Susan Wilson from CEFS in Effingham.
And I want to welcome all of you today to the 8th webinar focused on Roma.
Christine, we've done 8 of these.
I know, isn't that hard to imagine? It's mind-boggling, isn't it? And again, you know, Susan has graciously agreed to be my co-conspirator in this webinar presentation. And Susan, once again, I always say thank you, and I'm going to reach out again and say thank you so much. You bring such a great dimension to this webinar series. So thank you so much for your participation and your willingness to be a part of this.
Well, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to join you on this, and thank you for letting me share what we know and why we know that Roma is so important. And again, you were the one who trained me, so all credit goes to you.
Well, I appreciate that, but I learned quite a bit from you and so much so over these last 7, now 8 webinars. So today we're really focusing on the newbies to Roma, the newbies to community action. So hopefully some of you are on board with that today. And if this is a great refresher or a great reminder for those of you who have been exposed to Roma or Roma practitioners. But we really want to dive a little bit into kind of some, not the backstory, but maybe some of the more broader implications of what Roma is about, so you understand its role in community action.
So you're not afraid of it, or you don't dread it. It's really not scary. It really is a clarification of what you do and a way to share the good news of your accomplishments.
Yeah, I absolutely right. Well said, Susan. And I think that's what the most important about this is to understand that this is just something that you can embed into your everyday practices at the agency. So we want you to get very comfortable with Roma, and so that's why today we are spreading Roma love.
Aw.
I know, I tell you. Once again, we want to give a shout out to DCEO. This is funded through the contract that ICA has with DCEO, and we want to give them props for their support and their willingness to help us spread Roma love throughout the entire world. That's what we're trying to do today.
We have broad aspirations, yes.
We do have broad aspirations. At least the world as we know it, right? So here we are, so you can get a visual on us, Susan and myself. Just pointing out here that Susan is dually certified both as a Roma trainer and a Roma implementer. So she brings, I think, a beautiful, unique perspective to this. And that M in those string of initials means that I'm a master trainer. I've been at this for a few years.
And you are indeed a master trainer, Christine.
Some days I am, some days I'm a rookie trainer. So it just depends on the day, typically. As we get started, it is our custom to remind all of us of our purpose and our promise of community action. So whatever you're comfortable with, saying it out loud with us or to yourself, that's fine. But the promise of community action is this. Community action changes people's lives, embodies the spirit of hope, improves communities, and makes America a better place to live. We care about the entire community, and we are dedicated to helping people help themselves
and each other.
So we're talking about Roma today. Now, Roma, this isn't about Roma Downey or Roma Pizza or
that sounds good.
That does sound good. There's Roma tomatoes.
There's Roma.
Yeah, there's that.
Lady Gaga.
As I say, yeah, that's right. You did a whole thing on that, didn't you? We'll save that for another webinar.
No video, thankfully.
Yeah, no video, but yeah, it was. I remember it was pretty hilarious. And the other thing about Roma professionals is that we are really good at making fun of ourselves and one another. So
yes, we are well aware of the reputation Roma has, and that's why we're here to change that, because we're not scary, we're not the boss. We are here to help you tell your story well.
That's exactly right. And that is really what ROMA is all about. So ROMA is results-oriented management and accountability. And I think that's kind of a scary sort of thing to hear. What does that mean? Results-oriented management and accountability. Whew. Well, results are, that's what happens, right? And if we're going to be results-oriented, that means that's what we're focused on, are the results. And it impacts both the management of the community action agency on all levels, and it also is that walk of accountability in which we have to, these are federal and state funds that we're spending. We have missions that we have to follow. And this is an opportunity for us to really dive in and understand what accountability is.
Notice the focus is on results because that's why we're in business and that's our goal. So we help you achieve those results and report those results.
Absolutely. So if you're new to community action, welcome. We're happy that you're here with us. This is an incredible journey. I've been in community action for almost 20 years, and I have to say that it is my honor to be a part of this big network across the country in all the states and territories of over 1,000 anti-poverty organizations really working towards the idea that everybody has the opportunity to be stable and move towards self-sufficiency.
Well, my first encounter with community action was actually here at CEFS when I became a volunteer for the adult literacy program way back in 1987. I went on from there to become a classroom teacher. Then in 2011, I was hired by CEFS, and I'm currently the adult literacy coordinator. And that's where I learned the broad spectrum of community action services, all that CEFS and the other agencies do. I became familiar then with some of the names and services of the programs. Then a couple of years ago, I became the ROMA trainer and implementer, and now I really see how we all work together for common goals. And Christine, community action works.
It really does work. And that's what we have to just be very laser focused on, that is that, the work that you do, regardless of your role at the Community Action Agency, is so vital to the overall success of the agency. You are a part of that mission. You are a part of that focus of helping people and changing lives. So understanding some of this backstory, understanding, again, what ROMA is, what we can do, what we maybe cannot do, but we're not going to talk so much about that today. But we want to also remind all of you that community action is mission driven, and we're very much focused on results. And that's been true since 1964. And so we want to ensure that we have this pathway, this process, if you will, this structure that allows us to really tell our story. And like any other organization, we do use data to inform absolutely everything that we do. And really, when you think about what ROMA is that kind of data-driven opportunity for us when we examine our performance.
All right. There are over 1,000. I was going to finish that up. There's over 1,000 community action agencies in the United States and territories like Puerto Rico. So you are part of a very, very effective group of people. Community action, as you know, is helping people, changing lives. And community action uses data to inform everything we do. And that's part of what we teach you in ROMA.
Exactly.
Okay, go on.
Okay, that's all right. So this is a photo that you all might be familiar with. This is Lyndon Johnson signing the Economic Opportunity Act in 1964 in the Rose Garden at the White House. And what are some of the things we see here, Susan?
Well, I know the picture is kind of small and they can't tell, but if you were to look closely, you would see there's not a whole lot of diversity in that photograph. Minorities are not well represented. There's only one woman and maybe two people who are not white men. But you know what? We've come a long way. So even though this was a very important event, signing the Economic Opportunity Act, we've improved, we've advanced, and we've embraced the culture of America.
Yeah, and I think too, we need to kind of place in our thinking is that it was Lyndon Johnson that declared in 1961 a war on poverty. And it's important for us to think that in the scope of American history, community action plays a significant role. The Economic Opportunity Act launched community action agencies, but there were also other sweeping, a large scope of bills and acts that were passed during this time, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, for example. These are so important when we think about how the United States has shifted itself, certainly in the 1960s, to this broader attempt, this deeper attempt as well, broad and deep, to help individuals who were with economic security to ensure their right to vote, to ensure that they're equal through the eyes of everyone. And that's something I think that we still are certainly discussing now. But 1964 and 1965, we have to really kind of applaud and celebrate the fact that community action was a part of that broad sweep of change across the United States. So what's interesting, and we're not going to belabor this too much, but as we take this walk through the various presidential administrations, we know that when Johnson was president, he got a little distracted by the Vietnam War, and he opted not to run for re-election, and Richard Nixon was elected. Richard Nixon was not a fan of community action, so he appointed a team of fellows, Donald Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney, Christine Todd Whitman, Frank Carlucci, to really begin examining community action, and what the instruction was to dismantle it. Interestingly, Donald Rumsfeld, who was a one-term congressman from the state of Illinois, began examining community action, and the outcome of his examination and thinking through what community action was all about was putting together the mission, a mission that we still use now in community action, and also the kind of the model that we use, the way that we interact with customers and with communities. And so this is something that Donald Rumsfeld, he was signed off on. OEO, that's the Office of Economic Opportunity Instruction. We're all mandated by information memoranda and instructions, and so this is an important one for us. So if we look at this mission, and again, this is just essentially the first sentence of about a page-long mission. This really tells us quite a bit about what it is that we're supposed to be doing. And is just to pull out a couple of phrases from here to stimulate a better focusing of all available local, state, private, and federal resources. That's always been the goal, is that kind of that bundling of services, that bundling of money on the front end, which should enable the bundling of services at the Community Action Agency.
So to put this all in a nutshell, the mission is to give tools to the families with low income to become self-sufficient or to remain stable.
Yes. And if you really want to geek out on this, I suggest you pop this OEO instruction 6320-1 into your favorite search engine and read it in its entirety, because it is worth your time. And so here we have all of these dates, and we are not going to go over these, are we, Susan?
There's no need. I think they can read, and they can always go back to this webinar. It will be posted on the ICO YouTube channel, and they can always request information from us. We're happy to share.
Absolutely. And I think the one thing that this whole timeline tells us is this is the evolution of community action. We started in 1964. We're still working today, and we're still evolving and changing to adapt ourselves to the changing needs of our customers, of our communities, and also changing ourselves so we can tell that deeper and broader story, going deep and going big, about the change that we can affect at the agency level.
This shows that in 2001, the use of ROMA became mandatory, but in reality, good employees and good agencies have always used data to drive their decisions and have always reported their outcomes accurately. So even though it's mandatory to use that terminology, the ideas have always been there.
Absolutely, and I think the shift that has taken over time, if you will, is that it used to be when community action was launched, really in 1964, we were very good and very skilled at counting the number of people that attended something. But now what we're counting, and that's still an important number, but we also want to now think about what happened to those individuals that attended or participated or were involved. So thinking about that evolution and how we've gotten from 1964 to today here in 2020. And so we share this with you, these dates. And again, if you come to a full Roma training, which we encourage all of you to do, Susan and I are both available. Susan is our Southern Illinois representative, but is willing to go other places. Correct, Susan?
I am.
Yes. So
I'm happy to travel.
wonderful.
Not this week, but coming up.
Yes, yes, yes. Hopefully, when all of this is past us, we will, certainly be out in the field and helping all of you with your Roma practices at your agency. But it's important for us to understand these dates and that evolution of Roma and why we're talking about this and really encourage all of you to learn about Roma is because it is important to the work that we do and in our understanding. And so this is where we have to be very much focused on a results orientation. Again, a results orientation means that we're looking at the outcome, we're looking at the result. So this is a quote that I found. I believe he's an economist, if I remember correctly. But I thought this was a quote that really, I think, talked about the work that we do, that we're practitioners not judged by the rigor of logic or the elegance of presentation. They are judged by results. Right?
And I kind of struggled with this when I first got hired, Christine, because my idea of the adult literacy program was helping all the people and making everything comfortable and nice and good for them. And I didn't want to have to mess with pre-tests and post-tests and the documentation of the quantitative data and all that. But I truly realize now that that's got to be there. Helping them is nice, helping them is good, helping them is necessary, but I have to document it. I have to put it in numbers. I have to I have to report in numbers what I do. And so what this quote says is you're judged by the results. And my results aren't if they're happy, if my customers are happy or if they're pleased with my attitude. The results are, can they read better? Can they do math better? Are they ready to move on to something, to college or to get a GED? Are they ready to move on to novels, whatever their goals are? And so even though we like to think all of our work is wonderful helping people, what we've got to do in addition to that is document it.
Absolutely. And again, I think in sometimes our mindsets or our frame of thinking tells us that it always has to be a big pow and wow at those results. And that's absolutely not true, that we measure discrete change. Because again, if you'll notice back on that timeline, everything evolves and there are minor changes, but the minor changes lead up to the whole. And we have to think about it from that perspective. So again, this is where we do have to take on this opportunity to really document. So that really, I think, kind of tees up this idea for us, is that really whenever we use Roma, we become a practitioner. That's some, and this is a definition of a practitioner in which we really are engaged in a discipline. And that's what Roma is, I think, Susan, is this idea of having a discipline in place. So you have, you're following the Roma cycle, which we'll talk about in just a couple of minutes. But you're following the cycle. You're understanding each component of the cycle and where you are at any given moment in time in that cycle.
Yeah, we are much more than employees. We are professionals who make changes.
Yep, absolutely. So we'll talk a little bit now about the practice of Roma. And again, this is something I suspect might be slightly new to what it is your understanding of Roma is, but this is something that we must practice and embed every day in our work at Community Action. So this is, I think, just kind of a nice list for us to think about being results oriented. So ROMA is, as we know, is a tool of compliance, and that's what many agencies, not just in Illinois, but across the country, believe, that it is simply compliance. It shows up twice in the organizational standards. 4.3 is that affiliation, or you have a ROMA professional employed at the agency or an agreement with a ROMA professional. And 7.9 is about ROMA training, the provision of ROMA training at the agency. And again, that's...
Yeah, we are mandated to comply with ROMA, so that would be one reason, if no other. But also, ROMA is a pathway to agency success. It promotes inquiry into our systems, and it gives us the opportunity to change what could be made better. It impacts how we work with individuals and communities and other agencies. And ROMA is how we're judged, but I like it better, how we're measured. When we can show our stakeholders, the people who give us grant money, the people who serve on our committees, the people who volunteer for our programs, the people who promote our services, when they know that we do good, documentable work, and we can accurately report the work we're doing and show it, then we are in favor with our stakeholders, and maybe we can go farther with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I will just point out, I don't think it was any small accident that Community Action was included in the CARES Act, that big billion-dollar package, billions of dollars package for coronavirus relief. And, you know, Illinois is certainly is going to have a share of that money. You all know that, working at a community action agency or at DCEO. But I think it's important for us, again, you know, we have that known reliability to really document and to tell our story. So it really is how we are measured. And so this is really looking at community action then as a discipline, and this is new thinking perhaps for some of us. It was Peter Senge and Otto Schwarmer who wrote this really great book, Community Action Research, and not just focusing on community action agencies, but community action in the larger sense. And if you are viewing community action as a discipline, you're looking really at three different things. You know, are we willing to do research? That means that we are being very disciplined about what we're learning, what we're understanding about the work that we do, and to share what we've learned. And I think that's one thing that Community Action has done so well, is that we're constantly sharing our good practices that we've gained from working with different diverse populations, to working with young families, to working with children, to working with seniors, and different types of communities all over the United States and territory. So we have that in place. Also about capacity building, and this is capacity building, which sometimes we think capacity building only focused on, are we getting more grant money? But it's really capacity building within the agency, and outside our stakeholders as well, in which we are enhancing awareness and capabilities, both individually and in the collective, to really produce results that they care about. This is when we see grassroots organizations really focus in on one or two very important issues, and we see things begin to change. And then we have practice, in which people working together to achieve practical outcomes. This is what we do. Community action is truly can fits into this slot as a discipline. It could be a subset of social services, absolutely. But again, we have to focus ourselves around this notion that we are working in this approach as a discipline.
To sum this all up, because that is kind of a wordy slide, no offense, Christine.
It is a wordy slide, I agree.
We are committed to producing results with a practical outcome. Our outcome really is to reduce the effects of poverty. But in order to do that, we have to set our goals. We have to measure it, because you know what gets measured gets done. And if you can't measure it, it's not ROMA.
You're absolutely right. So here we have the visual, the graphic of the Roma cycle. For those of you who have been online with us with other webinars, you probably have seen this in absolutely every webinar. This is a cycle that's not unlike what other organizations use, whether it is any other performance management. I'm trying to think of some of them right now, and they're blown out of my brain. They'll come back though. In which we start everything off with an assessment. We have to understand what our community's needs are. We have to understand what resources are available. And that is, we have to also understand our data. That moves us right into planning. The first thing that you bring up with when you're planning is that you look and examine that agency mission statement. It's important that you do that because you have to really follow that mission. That's something that we do in traditional Roma training, is that we spend quite a bit of time at the beginning talking about mission, the 4 elements of mission, and how it is so important for us to have an articulation that is understandable both internally and externally. And then that's when you begin using your assessment data to identify what are the results that we're trying to shoot for, and what are some of our strategies that are needed to get to those results. And then we get to the part of this cycle which everybody gets really excited about, which is implementation. That's the boots on the ground. That's when we're rolling out programs, we're enrolling people, we're following people. And for us, it's really kind of it represents the fruits of our labors. But the real fruits of our labors come whenever we begin looking at the achievement of results, in which we're looking and reporting on progress, or if things stay neutral. It's all important, very relative. And then we do our evaluation, in which we look at data. If we've set benchmarks, and hopefully you've had, that you're looking to see if you've been able to achieve those benchmarks.
This is not, these are not single documents. By assessment, we do mean your community needs assessments, but more than that, you can use this in a very micro, macro way. When a family comes in for intake, just for that family, you can do assessment, planning, implementation, achievement, and evaluation. You can do it for your program, is LIHEAP, assessment, planning, implementation, or for your entire agency. And so don't get hung up that you have to do this one document for this one section of the cycle, because it goes on and you use it many different ways. And your assessment can be your community needs assessment, or it can be an assessment of a family, or an assessment of a program, or an assessment of a service.
And just, I always like to say about assessment is remember that everything always starts out with a question.
What do you need? Or how can I help you?
Exactly.
What can we change?
Yes, and that is the goal, is kind of getting to this change. And so in 2017, the National Network put out a theory of change. And this was kind of, I think, a big moment, if you will, in the world of community action, because it did this theory of change really kind of flipped how we tell our story. And traditionally, when Roma was first put out there, we were following 6 national goals that focused on family, agency, and community. So now when we look at this theory of change, we see that at the top there are 3 national goals. They're titled community action goals. Susan, did you want to maybe talk a little bit about these goals?
So goal 1 is individuals and families with low incomes are stable and achieve economic security. Goal number 2, communities where people with low incomes live are healthy and offer economic opportunity. Goal number 3, people with low incomes are engaged and active in building opportunities in communities. So we have these 3 main goals, and all of our work is done with those in mind, with those of our goals. Everything that we do should bring families to security, or bring communities to be healthy, or bring people into opportunities. So that's our goal. Now, beneath there are many, many sub-goals, and of course you can make your own. You know, how can your agency help that one family really achieve one of the 3 goals, or more? Sometimes they're interlinked. often they are.
Often they are, absolutely. And I think, too, that's an indicator that typically when an individual, a family comes to a community action agency, it's not just one and done. We certainly may have that perspective on LIHEAP customers because the qualification percentages are a little bit different. But honestly, if you are somebody seeking service at a community action agency, this is an opportunity to really see where it is that they need assistance in their lives.
When we come to your agency and give a ROMA training, we talk about the 5 whys, and that really addresses what you were just saying, Christine, because you're here because you can't pay your electric bill. Well, why can't you pay your electric bill? Because you don't have enough money. Why don't you have enough money? Because I don't have a job. And so when you go deeper and deeper, this is where they do become interlinked and where we can realize that the bundling services is one of the best ways to eliminate the effects of poverty.
Yeah, absolutely. And it could be, you may call it something else. It could be whole family. It could be 2gen. But again, it's the bundling of services that really is, I think, is what we need to truly consider and embed those practices at a community action agency. And I think the key of this is that if we look at this theory of change and we see those two kind of lightly shaded blue boxes, one entitled core principles and the other one performance management, this is what the agencies really have committed to. And I love these core principles because at the top of that list is recognizing the complexity of the issues of poverty. That is what community action agencies are. That's what we're here for. Those words show up in our mission, in our vision statements. This is what we work towards. And we understand that poverty is complex and are so layered that that's why it takes a community action agency with different people with different talents and skills to kind of get at the core of what some of those issues are. It's also a deep understanding that local solutions are very much needed to address local needs. And to me, the other hallmark of this is the support of family stability as a foundation for economic security. Again, this is what agencies believe. And I would really encourage all of you to not only take a deeper look at this theory of change, this is a vital document for the agency, but also to consider having your own theory of change. NASCASP has a guide on how to do that. I would encourage you to take a look at that guide. And if you need the assistance of Susan or myself to help you kind of vision what your theory of change might look like, we're happy to help you with that.
That's what we do.
It is what we do. So some of the questions could be then, well, what does it mean if we're using ROMA at our agency? And so the National Peer-to-Peer, the ROMA National Peer-to-Peer Project has put together this list of ROMA outcomes. What are some of the things that have happened because agencies have received ROMA training and have begun to embed ROMA practices at their agency?
One of the beauties of community action is although we have standardized some of the terminology and some of the forms, you still, what works in downtown New York might not work in rural Louisiana. And so you have the freedom to modify or to work specifically with the needs of your community, at the same time following ROMA because it's so broadly effective that you can still do it. So we have an increased and standardized understanding of principles. We have the increased use of the 3 national goals when we do our planning. We increase the ability to relate the agency mission to identified outcomes. All the work you do should lead to your mission. And when we come to our training, we take good looks at mission statements and how can they be modified to be more clear and more accurate. ROMA helps you identify outcomes and indicators because it's not just what you do, it's what change you make and how did you measure that change. ROMA improves management of agencies and programs with a results-oriented approach. It helps us collect, aggregate, and report outcome data. Christine, I like to use the term tooting your own horn because you do good work. We know that your agency helps people and changes lives. So tell us, show us, tell everyone. Go ahead and get on the radio and say, we helped this many families. Go ahead and put an ad in the paper saying, look at this family of distinction and how we have helped them achieve all that they've been able to achieve. And Roma helps improve ability to work with partners regarding shared outcomes. And I think the collaborations, the breaking down of silos, the networking is so important. We talked about that last time on how your when we talked about breaking down silos, how your employees can work together within the programs, within the agency, and within the community to because we all have the common goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that the last week's focus on breaking down silos, I thought was just so important for all of us to really think about, what is it that we're doing at the agency? How is it, again, are we moving more towards centralized intake, more about service bundling? But I'm going to go back to your previous comment too, Susan, is that horn tooting is kind of important. And that's something I will say that what I know about community action is that typically we don't tell our stories often enough. The FOD is certainly a place for us to tell our stories, but there's other opportunities for storytelling as well to tell those great stories of success. That's where the use of social media is absolutely perfect for, because it's all sound bites, right? So this is an opportunity for us to really, again, tell that story, to toot that horn, so people are like, will point to us and say, wow, I really like what they're doing. Let's see if I can be a part of that. So for all of you, and I assume everyone on this webinar today is considering becoming a Roma professional, right? Right, Susan?
Of course.
Isn't that what, yeah.
No question. They're
yes.
all eager.
Yes. So what are some of the attributes of a Roma professional? Well, at the top of the list, you'll see that understanding data is a big piece of that. And I will personally say out there, this is something that I have come to embrace over time. It's been an interesting journey, but I really now have a deeper understanding of data, the different types of analysis, and really how to use data to inform every decision. We have to also hold that whole agency perspective. We don't work as if we talked about the silo presentation last week, that when I ask somebody what you do at the agency, I typically get the name of the program, which could be CSBG, it could be LIHEAP, it could be foster grandparents, what have you. And that's great. But we also have to understand how you fit into the broader agency. And that is where you have to have that willingness to understand what say the housing, what do the housing counselors do? What does the weatherization team do when they're out working on a house? So it is that exploration of programs. Also, the understanding of the value of Roma. And honestly, I think if you think like a results-oriented person, most of us do, even though we may not identify or recognize that we do see the value of outcomes and results, that we have the capacity to communicate well. And then, of course, always that we have to display a positive attitude.
Yes. But there's a reason to have a positive attitude. And if you don't understand the value of Roma, or you don't have a positive attitude about it, please invite Christine or me or one of the other trainers to come to your agency and discuss this and let you know that it's not it's not a monster in the room. It is a way to organize your services and report them well. And you probably do that already. But we can give you some clarity, some of the correct, we give you the terminology, we give you some examples, we give you examples of things that didn't go well, and how we can avoid those traps. So please, if you don't understand the value of Roma, or you don't have a positive attitude about it, Christina and I can change that. Gina can change it.
Yeah.
Lots of us can.
Lots of us can, absolutely. Yeah, we're happy to help. Yep, in any way we can. So what are some of the activities that you take on at the agency as a Roma professional that you provide training? And that should be for everybody, right? Susan, I know that you have kind of taken that on a little bit with getting all staff trained up on Roma.
Yeah, as you said in our introduction, I have dual roles. I'm an in-house implementer for CEFS, and I'm also a trainer. And I've trained many agencies all south of Springfield. But if you're joining us from north of Interstate 80, I want you to know there are lots of us
Right.
south of Springfield. um, I kind of train, assist, provide, I cheer. My role as an in-house implementer just for CEFS is to be involved in some of the planning to ensure that it will lead us to achieving our mission. I review some outcomes to see if they're in the right language. I'm the go-to person for terminology, the measurement tool evaluations. Are we measuring what we want to measure? How to quantify positive changes. That's what I do in-house. As a trainer, when I go to your agency, I will present all the aspects of the ROMA cycle, and I'll help you determine any areas that can be strengthened or measured or reported more effectively.
Absolutely. So I think so many key pieces here that in terms of Roma agency activities, part of that is providing insight into the use of measurement tools. A couple of tools that are introduced in the traditional Roma training are scales and logic models. These are things that many of you already have some familiarity with. Um, we have to also bring our boards along in the understanding and practice of Roma. I think that Susan, you have shared that you've trained your board at CEFS, but you do it in short spurts.
Yes, they were hesitant to spend 8 long hours with me at once, so I broke it down. I went to several different board meetings during the year, and I gave about a 15 or 20-minute presentation for each one. And you know, I tried to make it as enjoyable as I could. I gave out prizes and made jokes and try to make it painless because the board members are busy and they don't want to be bored and they don't want to be overwhelmed with terminology that they don't really understand. So whenever I train, I try to make it as real as I can. That's why I'll say this again, although I've said it, I think at every webinar, I would prefer to train an agency, a program rather than an agency, because I can make it fit your Meals on Wheels. I can make it fit your LIHEAP. I can make it fit your housing. Um, and then it's much more interesting to you because you're not learning a lot of things that don't apply. Although, in the same breath, I want to say we're trying to break down our silos.
Mm-hmm.
But it's easier to train you well if I know what you do on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think too, yeah, so this is kind of a yes and. So we encourage training across the entire agency, but we also want to make the training very much relevant for you.
Yes.
So it is kind of, it's not awkward by any stretch of the imagination, but also something to be very thoughtful about at the agency. Now, I know that in Illinois, we have 26 Roma implementers and we have 6 Roma trainers. The goal is to have at least one trainer and one implementer at every agency.
We have a ways to go.
We do. And I will say, I also applaud those agencies that have more than one implementer at the agency. We've seen kind of a trend of that emerging here in the last couple of years, and I think that's really exciting as well.
Yes, CEFS has 2. My supervisor, Cindy Meyer, recently passed the test and is proud to say she's now an implementer as well.
Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, then what that role is that you're not just the trainer, you're not just the implementer, you're the cheerleader. You're the one carrying that megaphone and rallying everybody to really be focused on telling their story. And that to me is a very important role of the Roma professional, the Roma practitioner at the agency. So here is just a kind of a quick matrix on what is needed to become a Roma professional. At least 1 year of community action experience is suggested. I'm going to tell a quick story on myself, so forgive me. But when I came to community action, I started at the association in January of 2001, and I came from a background. I worked in a public utility regulation for most of my previous career, and I knew of community action. I certainly knew of the LIHEAP program, but that's about all I knew. But I was asked. I had been at the association for a scant 3 months, and was asked if I would be willing to enroll in the first national Roma boot camp, which was intimidating, as you can imagine. The way that the Roma training was structured then, very different than it is now, the train the trainer, is that I spent 2 weeks in Philadelphia, in a room full of what I would call the big names, the superstars of community action. And then there's little lowly old me who's like, I have no idea what they're talking about. But two things that I took away from that session. First of all, I learned much more about myself and my ability to train, but it also was a deep dive into what community action was all about. And I got to learn it from the voices and the experience of all of these thought leaders throughout the country. And so we recommend that at least 1 year community action experience is suggested. But I also can tell the tale that I think that is what really spurred me into, understanding and becoming a Roma practitioner, not just in my role at the association, but in almost every step of my life as I live it today. So enough about that. You're probably thinking, wow, she's crazily obsessed with Roma. So how do you become a Roma trainer? Well, first of all, you can register online, or there's more information at the Roma peer-to-peer website, and I would encourage you to take a look there. You can look at parts and pieces of it without actually having to become a registered user of the site. But if you want to become a registered user of the site, that's easy peasy to do. So if you want to be a Roma trainer, the cost of that is $995. All of this money is paid to the peer-to-peer program. And I serve on the board, just for full disclosure. I'm on the national board for the Roma peer-to-peer. There is an e-course completion. There are 3 classroom day training. It is a mix of training and practice training with peers. You are evaluated during this training, or you're given feedback on how you do.
And Christine, that was my favorite part, because always I learn more by talking and doing and being with other people in the same boat than I am by, sitting at the computer learning my e-courses. So, you know what, I had fun, and I learned, and I shared, and I got to experience how other agencies do things and what we have in common, and maybe some things that I can improve on by learning with them. So that was my favorite part. Plus, Christine, you have awesome lunches up there in Springfield.
Well, we try. I can't.
That's the most important part of any training.
Right. I can't take any credit for the ordered in the lunches. That's usually Haley, who does she's our food concierge.
Go Haley.
Yeah. So, and then what you have to do then, once that you completed the 3-day classroom session, and again, this is still classroom session, there is talk of trying to transition this to remote learning, and I suspect it will happen down the road. But then you do have to then do 2 practice sessions, typically in front of your peers at the agency, and those sessions are evaluated, and they're evaluated by a master trainer. So in Illinois, that would be me. At this point, I'm the only one, but hopefully all the rest of you, Susan, will become a master trainer.
That was subtle.
That was subtle. And then you do have to take an exam, and I believe it's a 60 question exam, open book, of course. Then to become a Roma implementer, and I will say that we do have these sessions here in Illinois. We've had 2 Roma train the trainers that we have a more difficult time filling those sessions up. The implementer, I will say, is a little bit more popular. So Roma Implementer is $775, again, all through the Roma peer-to-peer website. There is, again, the e-course completion that goes along with that. There is a 1-day classroom session in which you don't really go over the Roma curriculum piece by piece, but you are asked to spend quite a bit of time examining your own agency documents. So that would be the community needs assessment, the strategic plan, the community action plan, other planning documents that you may use. The implementer is transitioning to a remote learning opportunity. They've taken that one full day of training and then have broken it down into 3 consecutive online morning sessions. I do know that the state of Minnesota is launching this next month, and I get to be, luckily, a participant in helping those sessions move forward. So I will report back, and hopefully we will be doing some remote learning here in Illinois in the near future. The other piece of becoming a ROMA implementer, which is very different from the trainer, is the submission of the portfolio that focuses on agency ROMA practices. And Susan, you had to do this, obviously. How did you find the portfolio process?
I was, I guess, fortunate because I am the coordinator for the adult literacy program. I did my portfolio on the literacy program, and it was very easy for me to access my own data to fill that out. If I were to do it on a different program in the agency, first of all, they'd be in a different building. I'd have to work on their schedule. So it kind of depends what you have access to. For me, it was a breeze.
Okay, thank you. So I think that with some insight gained there, that if you are working in a specific program as an implementer candidate, that's where you probably should focus. And then finally, you do have to take an exam for this as well. I will say too that both of these credentials you do have to recertify. I believe that is every 5 years. I know that I recertified 2 years ago for my Roma trainer credential. And it's actually pretty straightforward. You have to take an exam and you have to essentially, I think, complete a full logic model for submission. And that's all reviewed by Barbara Mooney and her crew at the National Peer-to-Peer Office.
Yes, I've completed my trainer recertification. I'm currently in the process of recertifying as an implementer. I want to add something though. As a trainer, you get to go to other agencies, and that's kind of cool. As an implementer, you work in-house and you assist admin and others with some of the paperwork. But my training in Roma has really helped me personally. It's given me the confidence, the insight, the language and terminology to write better grants, to understand the need for collaborations and networking. It's helped me to share our successes with our stakeholders and the public. So really, I get a lot out of it.
Yeah, that's really true. I think that, again, that you can take many of these lessons that you learn in Roma in terms of, becoming an implementer or training, being a Roma trainer, that you can apply in putting grants together, in putting even together like a planning matrix. It all just kind of naturally begins to flow. A couple of the other requirements, if you want to, again, to maintain your credential, is that once every 3 years, you do have to attend a Roma in-service. Those are typically hosted twice per year. Usually they try to circle around the country in the regions. So the one that was scheduled for April in Omaha has actually now been moved to October in Omaha. And the one that was scheduled, and then we were supposed to be in Columbus, Ohio in October, and that has now been moved to next spring. We're hoping that will happen. I'm not real sure. Last I've heard, they were investigating looking at offering that remotely. I will say to me, it's one of the most worthwhile trainings that I go to. I try to go every year if I can. And you get to hear from all of our national partners. Denise Harlow is always there. Janae Bajellan from NASCAS is typically there. And these are just beautiful, rich conversations about Roma practice. We also do host each year. We started this 2 years ago, a Roma professional in-service for all Illinois Roma professionals. We try to bring in a guest speaker, and then we spend some time sharing our practices at our agencies with one another. So again, there's a lot of support. That's what I do. Part of my job duties are to ensure that all our Roma professionals and Roma professional wannabes, and that's all of you, you're on my list, beware, to really reach out and encourage folks to become a Roma professional.
And it's fun. Because of Roma, I've been to Dallas, Texas, and Birmingham, Alabama, and Springfield, Massachusetts for the trainings. And you learn so much by being with a diverse group of people, but you still have all the same goals. That, the 3 national goals apply to everybody there, and yet you still get to learn how some things are done differently. You get ideas on some things you might change, and you just learn so much from being around people who have the same goals and aspirations that you do of making your agency more Roma centered.
Yeah,
so yeah, I recommend it.
Yeah, I do too. And I will say that I have made some really key connections with other Roma trainers from around the country. And that has enriched, not only the work that I do, but what I can help other agencies speculate or think through. Because I'm saying, you know what, I know that Oklahoma is doing something. I've heard about this program at a meeting. Let's see if I can't reach out. And, so we make those connections. And that's really, I think, one of the big values of attending. If there is an in-service for any credential that you hold, it is that value of connection and sharing information with one another. So
and you get to toot your own horn too. My agency does this so well.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of horn tooting going on there, and that makes it a hoot. So horn tooting is a hoot.
Bad.
Okay, maybe that's the theme of next week's webinar. Okay.
Did you hear my eyes roll, Christine?
I did hear those eyes roll. But I want to dispel. We want to dispel with you some of these common Roma myths. Number one, that one I hear probably 99% of the time, that Roma is for CSBG only. I can see why that misperception is out there, because certainly it is kind of bent in the direction of CSBG, but Roma is for the entire agency. Again, last week's webinar on dropping those silos, I think there were some great examples of how Roma can be used across all agency programs.
Roma is a way to meet federal requirements. Well, yes, you are mandated by legislation to use Roma, but it's not just that. It's so much more than that. And it's not a huge burden. Actually, it simplifies because it clarifies. It shows you the steps. It makes it easier. And Roma is not needed. We already tell our story. Well, good. I'm glad you tell your story. Can you tell it better? Can you use the numbers? Can you quantify what you've done? Roma is going away. Well, you know what? I know that sometimes acronyms change and philosophies change, but what Roma is timeless and universal way of planning and achieving and reporting. So even if 25 years from now we don't say the word Roma anymore because something else took its place, the ideas are going to remain. We always want to plan. We always want to use our data to drive our decisions, and we always want to achieve results and report those results. So no, it's not going to go away. And it takes up too much time. Well, if we can simplify and streamline your work, your training might take up a day, but in the long run, you'll save time.
Right.
Agreed?
Agreed. And again, I think about, my processes that I undertake in the work that I do. I'm constantly working in and out of logic models. And I even use a logic model personally in my keeping our family organized, all of our family activities organized and moving forward. So again, these are opportunities that you can, really take and apply. And so, yeah, Roma's not going anywhere. If anything, Roma's only going to get better. And the more that we tell our story, the more attention that we will get. And we are already, but we are that trusted agency for our customers and our communities. And Roma really allows us to be and perform as that trusted agency.
And Roma is not a set of documents that you have to fill out. Don't get that idea. If you think so, you really need me to come to your agency, or Christine, or whoever the trainers are. There's 6 of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Roma is really about performance. I mean, that's what it really is at the end of the day. And so, you talked about the whys, the Roma whys, and this is kind of a bit of a variation on those. Are we making a difference or a change? Right? It's that question that we're answering. Are agency customers moving towards stability? Remember those national goals. That's, if that's a goal, an aspiration, how can we tell if agency customers are moving forward? Is the agency fulfilling the mission? That to me is a question that should be thought of almost every day. Does this align with our mission? Does this help us move individuals towards their goals or communities towards their goals? And then finally, are our communities improving to meet the collective need? Again, it's not an accident that we're called community action. In 1964, that was the idea, is that communities had a unique perspective on the needs in their community and could organize programs to address those needs. All right. Questions or encouragement? I hope that today that some of you had the opportunity to perhaps consider becoming a Roma professional, or perhaps it has deepened your understanding of why Roma is used at your agency. But we'd also love to hear from you.
Please ask us questions, send us comments, invite us over when we can be face to face. It's not so bad. It really isn't.
It isn't bad, and we try to have fun. And I will say that Susan has a lot more fun activities at your trainings than I do. I'm just going to put that out there for you, Susan.
Well, thank you. I try to make it as painless as I can.
All right. Well, I don't see any questions coming in. We would encourage you, number one, there is a survey that will launch after the end of this webinar, and then I think it will end up in your inbox 24 hours from now. So we would really ask you to fill out that survey, tell us what works, what doesn't work, what you'd like to hear from us, and we will return next Wednesday and provide hopefully some more engaging Roma-related information for all of you.
Same bat time, same bat station, right?
Yes, we will be here. So Susan, thank you so much for your participation and your willingness to be a part of this 8 webinar series at 8, moving into 9 now.
Moving to 9. Thank you for inviting me and allowing me to share what I've learned.
All right. Yes, you're more than welcome, and I'm so happy you're on this adventure with me. So until next time, folks, it's good to virtually hang out with you for a while. Take good care, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Next week. Bye.